In today's video, I'm going to give you all an updated tier list for the new patch 3.1a. Now, there's a few little tweaks, a few little changes to some of the champions. Maybe you have different opinions. If you do, let me know down in the comments as always. And I'll make sure to reply to all of them and see what you all think. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel as well for more Wild Rift content. I got my next A to Z guide coming up very soon, Corky, and I'll be playing a lot more different champions to give them a try as well, especially after these changes in the recent patch. First up, we have the Baron lane. Baron lane hasn't really changed too much, to be honest with you. I still think the three strongest champions in the Baron lane are still Fiora, Darius, and Camille. Fiora is just insanely strong at the moment. You can go for like a Divine Sunder, a tanky build if you want to, or you can go for a Trinity Force build. Both work really, really well. But Fiora just still does stupid amounts of damage. I think in 1 versus 1 duels, she's probably the best at the moment in terms of 1 versus 1 duels. Split pushing game, really, really strong. In team fights as well, she can be really good. If you can time the riposte and get a stun off as well and keep proccing your vitals on your passive, you can just deal a bunch of damage. Darius, one of the best team fighting champions at the moment in the Baron lane. If you can get the resets, if you get the apprehend, the pulls, you can heal so much with your first ability, and the bleed damage can definitely come in handy, especially during a laning phase. The build is kind of the same. You know, you can go for Black Cleaver, you can go for Divine Sunder if you want to, but not really the best build, to be honest with you. Not really the most optimal. I think the best optimal build is still Black Cleaver into kind of full tank in a way, which kind of can struggle against Divine Sunderer champions, but I still think Darius in general as a champion that can just heal so much and deal so much damage with your ultimate with the resets, he's still really, really strong. Camille, probably the most mobile champion, I would say in the entire game, but probably in the Baron lane, to be fair, probably the most mobile champion. I think she's very, very strong. She deals true damage as well from her first ability. She has a lockdown potential from her ultimate, which I think is very, very strong. And being able to get the lockdown from your ultimate and just being able to roam around the map and use that to kind of gank mid lane, or you can even roam to dragon lane if you want to as well, and use that to your kind of advantage in a way. It can be really good. And she's also very good at split pushing as well, because she can just go away to safety with her hook shot. Renekton received some buffs in the recent patch 3.1a. The Cold and Meek now has more healing based on how much attack damage you have, so it benefits a lot from the Blade Rune King Black Cleaver build. I think this is something that people have wanted from Renekton for a long, long time, because his Cold and Meek healing basically wasn't a part of his kit since he came out, because his healing was just not there. So now he gets a little bit more healing based on how much attack damage he does. Or based on how much attack damage he has, sorry, which is very, very nice. I still think in the laning phase, he's still one of the strongest champions. You have decent mobility, and you can be really impactful during the team fights as well. You can basically one-shot carries, you know, with the Blade Rune King Black Cleaver build, because you get the extra movement speed, and you can proc Blade Rune King from your empowered second ability, which is very, very nice. And you can use your ultimate to survive as well during team fights. Set is very good at the moment. I think the suplex and just being able to dish out true damage from your haymaker is very, very important. And it's just super tanky as well, to be fair. You know, being able to get the extra big, massive shield after he gets like a full stack of grit can be very, very annoying. You basically have to move away from the haymaker, because if you don't move away, if you get that true damage dealt to you, obviously it ignores all armor and magic resist. It can do quite a lot. And he still can be very good in team fights as well, because the suplex, if you can land a suplex on top of the whole of the enemy team, follow that up with your third ability, and then with your haymaker to survive, it allows the rest of your team, allows the rest of your team to follow up and deal a bunch of damage. Garen is still a very easy champion to play. He's still a very, very strong tank at the moment in the game. Black Cleaver, Sterix Gauge, great combo for Garen. Yeah, just does insanely well. Spin to win. Use your silences, use your ultimate to basically execute enemies. Even though he did get nerfed a couple of patches ago, he's still insanely powerful. Riven, I feel like, is definitely probably the weakest out of all these S tier champions. I just don't feel like she's as strong as what she used to be. She did get a little bit of a buff this patch. Not this patch, sorry, a few patches ago, I should say, with her third ability having a longer duration now, which is quite nice for her in the Baron lane and also in the jungle as well, which I'll talk about in just a second. But I still think she's okay. I still think she's very, very mobile. She could definitely outplay her opponents as well if you know how to play Riven. If you can master Riven, then she's a very, very good champion to play, because her mobility and how you can outplay as well by using your abilities and auto attacking in between, getting the most damage output as possible. And her ultimate still does a lot of damage as well. Her ultimate basically empowers all of her abilities, her auto attack, and you can cast your ultimate again to just do a lot of damage to enemies that have a lot of missing health. Irelia, really, really good in the early game if you can get the attack speed buff or the bonus from your passive. If you can keep getting the resets on your first ability as well, you can keep dashing around a lot during team fights. I'm sure you've seen Irelia's probably in your games or in competitive, where Irelia's are just dashing from here, there, everywhere, and you just have no idea where Irelia is going. Really hard to deal with because she dashes around a lot. But the main thing with Irelia is just making sure that you get the resets on your first ability to make sure you can do that, which can be a little bit of struggle at first. She is quite difficult to play. And I think Wukong is probably the most underrated champion, I think, in the Baron lane at the moment. I don't think a lot of people are really playing Wukong in the Baron lane quite a lot. I mentioned this before in my other tier list in patch 3.1, but I think Wukong is a very, very strong Baron laner. Very, very tanky, can heal quite a lot as well from Divine Sunderer. Great during team fights as well. Can be quite good during laning phase. Probably a little bit weaker in the laning phase than other champions in the S tier. But still really, really strong when it comes to team fights with the Cyclone. Heals quite a lot as well and just is super, super tanky. Moving on to A+, I think some of these A+ tier champions could definitely move up into S tier. Especially Gragas as well. The thing with Gragas is that he doesn't really do too well against like these tanky bruisers, really, to be honest with you. He can struggle quite a bit because he doesn't have that one-shot potential that he can have, you know, against like mages in the mid lane, for example, or even in the jungle where he can roam around and kind of focus on them squishy carries. Because Gragas against these, you know, tanky bruisers can struggle quite a bit. That's why in the Baron lane, most of the time you build Rod of Ages just to be a little bit more tanky yourself, and then you go for 4 AP after that, just to survive in the early laning phase. Olaf is quite good in the Baron lane. Even though, you know, after the nerfs to his third ability during this recent patch, I still think Olaf is still incredibly strong. I don't think there's any real champions that can really, you know, deal with how much consistent damage that Olaf can deal with his third ability, because he can just keep spamming it over and over and over again. You just feel like the champion just never runs out of mana at all, which is quite annoying to deal with. So third ability getting nerfed by 10 damage doesn't really mean too much, to be honest with you. And he still can be very strong in the Baron lane. Pantheon as well did get a little bit of a nerf because the Blade Rune King now costs 100 extra gold. But to be honest, Blade Rune King costs an extra 100 gold. Didn't really do too much, to be honest with you. I still think champions benefit a lot from Blade Rune King, and I still think it is very, very strong. And like I said before in my patch rundown video, 100 gold you could basically wait in base for. Not really that much of a difference. It just might mean a difference between completing Blade Rune King before Dragon and maybe not completing Blade Rune King before first Dragon. So yeah, still could be pretty good though. Graves in the Baron lane. We've seen a lot of crit Graves going around at the moment. I've definitely seen a lot of crit Graves going like Bloodthirster, i.e. Solari Charge Blade, Storm Razor as well. The amount of damage that you can deal with Graves is absolutely disgusting. I still think his best build is like more of a Bruiser type of build where you go for Black Cleaver into Bloodthirster after that, and then you can go for the likes of, you know, maybe Hullbreaker, Storm Razor, Infinity Edge. Even Mortal Reminder is being built sometimes as well on Graves. But I think he is very, very strong at the moment in the Baron lane. Could definitely do very well against the Bruisers because he's more of a ranged champion. So he can do quite well with dealing against the Bruisers, because you can just keep using your auto attacks at range and keep poking with your first ability. And then you have a dash as well to get away from Bruisers, which are quite nice. Shen, I think Shen is kind of weak at the moment, to be honest with you. Shen doesn't really have the same power as what he has in PC League. Now, you do have the Global Ultimate, which is very, very strong. You do still have your Taunt, which can be very impactful, especially during team fights as well. But mainly with Shen, what he is, he's mainly a split push champion. But the problem at the moment is that Shen doesn't have an item called Tiamat from PC League of Legends. Now, Shen with Sunfire Cape can push a little bit, you know, can push very, very well, but Tiamat is one of the items in PC League of Legends which really makes Shen come online. Because you can split push so much, you can clear waves very, very quickly, and you can use that to your advantage and use your ultimate to rotate around the map. But unfortunately, he doesn't have that. He's just not really tanky at the moment. Obviously, tanks don't really do too well in the meta because of Divine Sunderer. But again, like I said, you know, his ultimate is still very impactful and his taunt is still very good. You still do get quite a lot of shields. Jax, I think, is a little bit weaker in the Baron lane compared to in the jungle. You know, you don't really do too well in the early laning phases, and you do need to scale quite a lot. You do need to get 3 or 4 items before you can get to that point. But he's just not really strong during the laning phase. He can struggle a bit against the other champions, which can be a little bit difficult. But if you can scale into mid and late game, it can be very, very strong. Jace doesn't really benefit a lot from any of the new items that came in patch 3.1, but it's still insanely strong if you build items like Black Cleaver, Serrated Grudge, or Mortal Reminder if you need to. Manamune as well still works very, very well with Jace. You can still build like Ghost Blade as well, Edge at Night, just go for a more lethality build. He is still insanely strong. Does a lot of poke damage and does a lot of damage in melee form as well. Akali definitely does struggle a lot in the lane phase after the nerfs that she received a long time ago. But honestly, Akali is one of them champions that is very, very hard to deal with when it gets to middle late game because of the invisibility that she has. So make sure you buy Sweeper against Akali. And yeah. Or you're just going to get one shot as an AD carry main. And that's happened many times to me. I think my 3 most banned champions is Musty, Evelyn, and then Akali. So, yeah, she's quite annoying to deal with. But you can punish her a lot in the laning phase, which is why she's not insanely broken at the moment, in my opinion. A tier, I think Nasus could definitely move up, in my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments. But I have played with and against quite a few Nasuses now. And the healing that you get from Grassy Undying plus Divine Sundering with Nasus is insanely strong, to be honest with you. Just the problem with Nasus is that he just doesn't really have the presence and the team fight potential. You know, Nasus just runs around and just auto-attacks you, basically. You know, slows you with the second ability, has the ultimate to get a little bit more tanky, and just runs around and uses his Q, which sometimes can be really good against some team comps. You know, if you get against a lot of if you get a lot of champions, that has a lot of peeling, like Janna, for example, Braum, Alistar could be quite annoying for Nasus. Anyone that has really any sort of CC can be quite annoying for Nasus. Again, as I mentioned, Malphite and Dr. Mundo, both tanks, don't really do too well at the moment. Mundo's very good against full AP comps, so make sure you keep that in mind. If you're against a lot of AP, can come in handy. Malphite is good against a lot of AD champions. So let me take a quick sip. Malphite is good against a lot of AD champions, but again, the problem is at the moment Divine Sunderer is currently meta in the game, which means that tanks are not really too beneficial. And again, it's kind of the same thing with Nasus as well. But the thing is with Nasus is that he has Divine Sunderer himself. So when you have Divine Sunderer and you're against a champion that has Divine Sunderer, normally that works out completely fine. Kennen's just Kennen, really. You know, just doesn't really do too much, to be honest with you. I think Kennen's stronger than the B tier champions, but just isn't that strong at all. Can do quite well with the ultimate, but to be honest, the ultimate doesn't even feel that strong at the moment because there's so many bruisers and so many, you know, tanky bruisers at the moment. Kennen was really good when he got released, just not really that strong anymore because of this tanky bruiser meta. Singed, Tryndamere, and Jarvan. Jarvan's really fallen out from the Baron lane, to be honest. I might just completely remove him from Baron lane because he's just fallen out completely. The reason why he was good in the Baron lane before, because you were going like this summon airy poke build, but it's just not really that impactful anymore. Singed just runs around and just tries to do as much as he can, but just gets kited way too easily. It's like a worse version of Nasus, really. And then Tryndamere really struggles during the laner phase, but if you can scale up, you can do quite well. And then C and D, I was going to say D tier. There's no one in D tier. C tier is Teemo and Kayle. Kayle just really, really weak, doesn't do anything at all until you get to level 15, basically. And Teemo is just Teemo, who is pretty damn annoying. Moving on to the jungle now. Now, jungle's a bit of an interesting one because I do feel like a lot of other champions can move up into the S+ tier, which I'll explain in a second. But I still do think that Lee Sin and Kha'Zix are definitely 2 of the strongest champions at the moment in the jungle. Lee Sin, because of his early game presence, you don't really see a lot in competitive anymore, because a lot of competitive games are around, you know, these kind of team fights and around trying to get scaling into the mid and late game now, which obviously Lee Sin doesn't really do too well with. In solo queue, you could definitely benefit a lot from all of his mobility and all of his damage in the early game, because obviously solo queue is a lot different to a competitive environment. Kha'Zix as well, this champion is just so disgusting. You know, can turn invisible, can get resets, can do a lot of single target damage as well when you find champions that are isolated. Doesn't really do too much in team fights. Is more there for, I guess you can call it cleanup in the team fights. But yeah, Kha'Zix, pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. S tier, like I said, there's a lot of champions in S tier that could potentially move up, to be honest with you. I think some champions to call out for is definitely Evelynn as a solo queue champion. Is definitely very strong. Master Yi as well, even after the nerfs, is very, very good. Fiora as well. They'd probably be my top 3 that could move up into S+ tier. Moving on to the S tier anyway. You have Olaf. Olaf is, in my opinion, stronger in the jungle than Baron lane. Sometimes he can struggle a little bit in the Baron lane. But in the jungle, you know, if you can pair it with a Yuumi, if you can go for like this tanky build with Olaf, you basically become unkillable. You know, with the Ragnarok, with his ultimate. Again, even though his third ability got nerfed, I still think he's insanely strong. Evelynn, as I just mentioned, incredibly strong during for solo queue. The thing is that people don't really know how to play around Evelynn, which I think is kind of why Evelynn is so strong in solo queue, because of her invisibility. And yeah, can just clear the jungle very, very fast and do insanely well to try and isolate and try and split the team up as well, which I think is the main thing. But with Evelynn, you need to make sure you buy sweepers, make sure you stay grouped, which not a lot of people do in solo queue, which is why you never see Evelynn in competitive, because in competitive you just group up against an Evelynn and then she just becomes completely useless and she can't do anything. So yeah, this is why it's the solo queue tier list. If it was competitive, it'd probably be maybe A tier or B tier maybe, because competitive Evelynn is just not very good. Fiora kind of same as Baron lane, to be honest with you. I think Fiora definitely benefits a lot more from Baron lane because you can proc her vitals, and you can definitely benefit from her being a very good duelist, which you can do sometimes in early Scuttle Crab fights with Fiora in the jungle. Fiora jungle just allows her to kind of scale a bit easier into the middle late game, because you could just farm the jungle. You don't have to focus a lot on the laning phase. You don't have to focus on any other champions, which I think is the same in with Jax as well. Kind of why Jax is not really that strong in the Baron lane, because he does struggle a lot in the early game. But, you know, in Jax jungle, you can farm the jungle as much as you can. And when you do farm, you can get 2 or 3 items very, very easily, which means you can scale into the mid and late game very well, which is where Jax really comes online. So, yeah. Fiora, still good in the jungle, still very, very good. Same with Camille as well, still insanely strong in the jungle, even though jungle clear speed is not as strong now because of some of the recent nerfs that they did. Again, that lockdown potential from Hextech Ultimatum is very, very good. You can make sure that you can just gank very easily as well. You have a lot of mobility with your hook shot, so you can get away to safety, or you can engage during them ganking, sorry. Again, with the lockdown. Morgana's more of a utility jungler, really. Probably has the fastest jungle clear now after the nerfs to Master Yi. Probably has, yeah, like I said, one of the fastest jungle clear speeds in the game. Does a lot during the team fights, but to be honest, can struggle a little bit in the early game with the early skirmishes. And her ganking potential is not really up there. Again, she's more beneficial during them early game team fights and scaling to middle lane game. Vi got some pretty insane nerfs and has definitely moved up the tier list for me. 6 AD in the early game is crazy. She was already very good in the early game against other bruisers in the jungle. Now she's going to be even stronger. Her clear speed in the jungle is definitely going to be a lot quicker, and she's going to be insanely strong. So, and also she's probably probably the easiest jungler to play with Master Yi as well, which is why, in my opinion, why she's S tier. So if you're looking for a jungler to play, Vi is definitely a champion to play. Nunu as well definitely received some buffs in the recent patch. I keep on eating a drink because my throat's really hard. I don't know why, but I guess I'm talking too much. But yeah, Nunu with AP Nunu. You can kind of go for like Rod of Ages into full tank now because of the AP ratios. Because the AP ratio has gone up on Consume, on the third ability, and also the ultimate. So go for more AP damage. Nunu is probably the way to go now, but you still want to build a little bit of tank, and I still think Aftershock is the best rune for him. Xin Zhao, really, really good. Does a lot of damage, has great ganking potential, really good against bruisers as well. Yeah, just insanely strong overall. Graves, as I mentioned already as well, is really good. You don't need to go for like Hole Breaker in the jungle. I saw Graves go Hole Breaker first item. Please don't do that. Hole Breaker is terrible for junglers. You know, with junglers, you want to be in team fights, you want to be ganking, you want to be around them objectives. And what's near them? All of them 3 things: your teammates. Hole Breaker, not very good when you're around your teammates because you don't get the extra bonuses. So pretty useless. And Master Yi as well. Even though Master Yi received a nerf, I don't think he is. I don't think he's broken, even though I ban him quite a lot. I think just the thing is with Master Yi is just his single target damage now is so disgusting. Kind of same with Evelynn in a way. If you get isolated against a Master Yi, he's just so disgusting, honestly. He does like 80% of your damage. His jungle clear speed definitely got lowered by quite a lot. So I think Morgana wins now, takes the crown of fastest jungle clear speed. But I still think Master Yi is very, very strong. Rengar still has the one-shot potential to be very, very strong. Again, does very well against isolated enemies. The same with like Evelynn and Kha'Zix and Master Yi in a way. One of them champions that just does really well just when enemies are alone. You can go for like a more tanky version of the Rengar build, which you've seen a little bit in competitive. Wouldn't really recommend it in solo queue. I think going for that one-shot potential with Rengar is probably the best way to go. Jarvan, more of an early game champion, using the flag and drag, using the ultimate as well to just lock down enemies, but can be quite difficult because there's a lot of champions with a lot of mobility at the moment in the game. You know, if you think about it, if you pick Jarvan and then the enemy team picks Xin Zhao, Graves, Fiora, Camille, Jax, Vi, Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, you know, there's so much mobility in the game, which is absolutely crazy. And all these mobility champions are very, very strong, which is why Jarvan is just not as strong, because you don't really have that lockdown potential from Jarvan with his ultimate. Because when you use your ultimate, okay, it does damage, but they'll be able to easily escape the Cataclysm. Wukong's not that strong in the jungle compared to Baron lane, but still can be quite good. Still really impactful, as I said, during team fights and during the first dragon fights. Can't really clear the jungle that well anymore because of some of the recent nerfs that he got to the jungle, but still quite good. Pantheon, pretty good. Blade Ring King plus Black Cleaver. You can use your ultimate to gank as well around the team fights. Does really well in the early game skirmishes as well with the empowered abilities. Can lock down as well pretty damn well. Gragas is an interesting one. I think Gragas could definitely move up into S tier because of the one-shot potential that he has against them, you know, against the AD carries and against them, you know, kind of mid laners as well at the same time. But I don't know, his early game's kind of weak. His jungle clear speed is kind of okay, not really the best, but it's not too bad to be fair. But I definitely think Gragas can definitely move up into S tier, but not really too sure. These 80 champions are kind of all Baron laners that have kind of fallen off in the jungle. Set never really gets paid in the jungle anymore. Same with Riven as well. Jace sometimes does, to be honest with you, but not as much as maybe what people would think of him as a jungler as. But yeah, Set just doesn't really do too much anymore in the jungle. You can still play him in the jungle. He still does quite a bit. Same with Riven as well. With her mobility, she can still be really strong. But Jace is probably the best out of that bunch. B-tier champions, Rammus, Shyvana, Tryndamere. Rammus is just kind of weak at the moment. Can't really do too much. You know, it can still be impactful. We saw Rammus support win in WREC, so you can still win with these lower tier champions, so don't let this fool you, I guess, in any way you could say. But yeah, with the Divine Sunderer at the moment, the same with like a Moo full tank and Mundo as well. You know, these three champions building full tank against Divine Sunderer champions are just not really too strong. And especially because there's a lot of mobility in the game at the moment as well. Can be very, very difficult. And then Tryndamere, you could kind of farm up in the early game. Kind of same with Jax in a way. If you farm up in the early game, you could definitely be up there as one of the best when he gets to the mid and late game, because you could do a lot of damage. But yeah, just doesn't really do too much in the early game and is kind of weak as well. You kind of just need to AFK farm for like the first 10 minutes and then maybe you're useful. Shyvana as well, just a very coin flip champion. If you can get dragons, happy days, you're strong. If you don't get dragons, you're probably one of the most weakest champions in the game. And again, just doesn't really offer too much in terms of team fights as well, which is kind of the strong part of the game at the moment. Moving on to the mid lane now, Zed and Diana I still think are the two strongest champions. I still think Zed has the same bug that he had in the previous patch, where his third ability doesn't proc Conqueror. I'm not too sure, I'll probably have to double check that, but there's been a lot more people that have been running Electrocute on Zed recently. But I still think the champion overall is just insanely strong as an assassin. Same with Diana as well, you know, the teamfight potential of these two champions, the 1 versus 1 potential as well, the laning phase, everything about them is just incredibly strong. But to be honest, most of these S tier champions can definitely move up into the S plus tier. Irelia, I think, as a mid laner against mages especially, is very, very strong because you can take advantage of her early game and stacking up her passive. If you stack up if you stack up her passive, you could definitely look to go in and definitely look to engage onto mages, which is where Irelia really does shine. Katarina, reset, absolute queen. in the mid lane. Does struggle a lot against crowd control, but is very, very good champion. Just keep on reset after reset. Does a lot of damage. Can definitely be a pretty, really big nuisance to deal with. If you're against Katarina, make sure you pick a lot of crowd control on your team. Whether you're, I don't know, even if you're an AD carry, pick Karma, for example. I don't know, pick someone that can deal with Katarina, because she's just a big, big nuisance to deal with, and is very, very annoying as well. Twisted Fate, with his global ultimate and with his long range gold card, still comes in really, really strong in Wild Rift. He's very, very good. I think the ultimate is probably the main part, Destiny, with Twisted Fate, allowing him to rotate around the map and use his global presence to try and get other lanes ahead, because he doesn't really get a lot. He doesn't really get ahead in lane by himself. He's mainly used as this utility mid laner that uses his gold cards, can rotate around the map. So that's really where Twisted Fate shines. Kha'Zix is still insanely strong in the mid lane as well. Has the biggest damage output probably out of anyone in the entire game at the moment. Just stay back, throw your bombs, do as much damage as possible, and you'll be completely fine. Galio is very good against any AP mages really in the mid lane, or pretty much against any good mid laners, to be fair. Even against champions like Irelia that can dive on top of you, you can just use your taunt, use your dash to get away to safety as well. You do a lot of damage as well with the full AP build, sorry, with Rod of Ages, with other AP items as well. Can be very, very good, but again, the support, you know, you can still play him as a support as well, but mid lane is still very, very strong. Yasuo is actually pretty damn strong, to be honest with you. I still think the best Yasuo build is still going for Solari Charge Blade, just because you didn't really need the extra 25% crit with Solari Charge Blade anyway. It was just that Solari Charge Blade after one item, boom, you get 100% crit rate. Even now, you still get a really high percent crit rate with Solari Charge Blade as a first item, and you still do a lot of damage as well with the extra damage and extra crit damage you can deal now with Solari Charge Blade. So, and now the extra speed and the extra damage as well from the Tornado. Honestly, the Tornado is very, very hard to dodge, and he is a very difficult champion to deal with, but he is the 0 and 10 king in the mid lane, so pick him if you dare. Karma's still insanely strong even after her nerfs as well. Her nerfs are basically to her empowered Q, which basically doesn't mean anything at all. I'll be totally honest with you. I mean, her empowered Q is kind of what made her really strong in terms of wave clear, and in terms of maybe mid lane and duo lane, why she was quite strong. But to be honest, she still has a bunch of shielding. Her crowd control is still insanely strong. She still does a lot of damage as well with her Q. So honestly, the nerf didn't really do too much to Karma, and it wasn't really why Karma was very strong in the first place. Ahri, with her roaming, with her charms, with her scaling as well, with all her mobility, is definitely very, very strong. Orianna, more of a scaling mid lane champion. Doesn't really do too much in the laning phase, but is more of like a stall champion that can clear waves, do a lot of damage at long range. The same with Ziggs as well. Her ultimate definitely does a lot of damage as well. So more of a stall champion in the mid lane. You know, can't really make a lot of plays, but is more of them control mages that can just control team fights and control the mid lane wave as well, and do as much as possible. Gragas, the complete opposite to Orianna. Gragas always wants to go in, do a lot of damage. As I mentioned, you know, mid lane Gragas is very, very good with the full AP build. I think he's probably better in the mid lane and jungle than the Baron lane. And yeah, it's just very, very awesome to play, because one-shotting people with Gragas is definitely very satisfying. Akali, very, very good in the mid lane. Again, the early lane phase can be a little bit of a struggle, but I definitely feel like Akali has some better matchups in the mid lane than Baron lane, because Baron lane, you could be against a lot of these bruisers, but in the mid lane, you kind of against these, you know, other assassins and other mages, which, you know, are not really too strong in the mid lane early on. So you can farm up a lot easier, you can play a lot more passive in the early game as well, and you don't really feel like you're under a lot of threat, really, in the mid lane. So that's why, in my opinion, the Akali mid lane is a lot better than Baron lane Akali. Lucian, Akshan, and Corki, all kind of, you can call them AD carries for the mid lane. Not really too strong. I feel like Lucian is a little bit weaker. I'll explain a lot more detail in the AD carry section, but Lucian's a lot more weaker now with Solari Charge Blade. and doesn't really, is really strong still during the laning phase, and that's kind of where Lucian mid lane thrives, is that you can play very aggressive during the laning phase with your passive, with all your abilities, and do a lot of damage, and you can kind of get an early game lead. Same with Akshan as well. Akshan is just very, very strong in the early laning phases, being able to proc your passive, your shield, and just have a lot of mobility as well with the swings, and still has that annoying ultimate as well. Not ultimate, the second ability passive that allows you to revive all of your team. Corki more for team fights and more for late game scaling. The package is still very, very strong at the moment. And again, the late game scaling of Corki with this full crit build, which I'll probably do in a video on soon, is very, very good. Morgana in the mid lane still has a lot of wave clear. I think she's better in the jungle, to be honest with you, though, because she can't really do too much in the mid lane. She just kind of sits mid, clears waves, but she's kind of a weaker control mage compared to Orianna or Ziggs. But when it gets to team fights, you can definitely be a lot more impactful than Ziggs and Orianna, because you can go in, you can land your Dark Binding, follow that up with the ultimate as well, but sometimes you can be in a little bit of a difficult spot with that as well. Fizz, I still think, is fairly strong. I'm not too sure if Fizz can move up to the S tier or not. I'm not really too sure. I think Fizz is fairly strong, to be honest with you. I think he's definitely... It's very, very hard in mid lane. I think there's definitely a lot of mid laners that are very, very strong. Fizz does have the one-shot potential, but can be countered quite a lot by Zhonya's, which means that, kind of same with Zed in a way, but Zed just has a lot more extra damage that he can deal and a lot more extra mobility, whereas Fizz, if you use your ultimate, use your third ability, then you're kind of in a little bit of a difficult situation. You can be a little bit exposed. Jason, Renekton, more Baron lane champions, but can both be played in mid lane. Obviously, Renekton with his buffs as well can be very, very good. And also Jason as well, when you're building full lethality in the mid lane, you have the ranged advantage as well against most other mages, and you can poke quite a lot in the mid lane as well, which can definitely come in handy. A-tier champions, not really that good. You can see KO is down the C tier again. Ren's Soul, okay, not too bad, to be honest with you. It's one of them champions that you need to really snowball with the early game roams, because your third ability is on like a 1 minute cooldown. So if you kind of waste your third ability, and if you don't make your roams count in the early game, he just doesn't really do too much compared to other champions, as I just completely hit my desk for no apparent reason. Yeah, Aurelion Sol just doesn't really offer too much in team fights. He can get countered really easy as well, especially against bruisers that can just dive on top of him. I think this is where all these champions definitely struggle. It's champions that can dive on top of you, like Zed, like Diana, like Yasuo. All these champions in the S+ tier and S tier. Irelia, Katarina, Ahri. All these champions that can dive on top of you against Aurelion Sol, which obviously does most of the damage from his stars and not his auto attack, so he needs to make sure he keeps his distance, which can be a little bit of a struggle. Brand as well does a lot when you are at range against enemies, but if anyone jumps on top of you, Brand doesn't really do too much. And the same with Veigar as well. Now, Veigar's an interesting one, did receive a buff, but the problem is that Veigar just can't really do too much, really. His scaling is not really too good. The event horizon going down by 2 seconds at all rank was a pretty big buff, to be fair to you, but I think just his scaling and his damage and just the way you can play Veigar is just not that strong. You don't really have that zone control that you normally have from like PC League, PC League, for example, but in certain matchups and in certain team cons it can be very, very good. B tier is more of like the unique picks, really, to be honest with you. I think all these champions can definitely perform very well, especially Lux mid that I've been seeing quite a lot as well. Annie as well. The champions are not really too good and can't really carry a lot of games, but if you're strong on the champions, if you know how to play the champions, and if you're very good at them, then you can definitely carry games. Same with Seraphine as well. If you land your ultimates, same with Annie as well. If you can land your ultimate, if you can one-shot champions, with all these champions, then you can be very, very strong. But again, it's just being able to one-shot them, which is definitely a difficult part. And then, as mentioned before, Kayle just not very good. Kayle is a little bit weak at the moment, which is why Kayle is sitting down in the C tier. ADC tier list. There are some changes. Changes that probably people didn't think that I would make, but I'm actually finally making. S+, I still think Varus and Kai'Sa are definitely up there. Kai'Sa, actually, I've been playing a new build with Kai'Sa, which I'll probably do a video on. I mentioned it briefly in my previous build with Kai'Sa, but this new Kai'Sa build is like double BF Sword, Storm Razor, and then IE, so you just go Storm Razor plus IE. Obviously, it delays your third ability by quite a lot, but to be honest, the amount of damage that your abilities and your auto attacks do with Storm Razor plus IE is absolutely disgusting. And now you can go for double BS sword as well, because both Stormrazor and IE build from double BS sword. So your Q upgrade is actually not delayed at all. Your Q upgrade is exactly the same as before. So insanely strong. I still think Kha'Zix is very good. One of the best solo queue champions to play as well, because she has a lot of self peel. She can turn invisible. She does a lot of single target damage as well. Just a lane phase she kind of struggles with. And same with Varus as well. Varus is just insanely strong with the poke build as well. You could just play passive, play safe, use your poke. It just does a stupid amount of damage, to be honest with you. S tier, there's some champions in here that are quite interesting, and I'll talk to about Vayne in a second. Xayah I still think is very, very good with Stormrazor IE build, just going for like a full AD build. I still think she's very, very strong at the moment with all her feathers, with her root, great self-peel as well. You can use your ultimate to dodge quite a lot of abilities, like Alistar combos, Camille ultimates. There's surprisingly some ultimates and some abilities that you can actually dodge with Xayah ultimate, which makes her really, really strong. And again, if you can master Xayah, if you understand how her third ability works, then you can be very, very strong. Caitlyn, probably most lane dominant champion in the ADC tier list at the moment. Just insanely strong. That laning phase where you have that lane advantage is really where Caitlyn comes online, and really where you need to push Caitlyn's advantage to try and get that advantage in the early game to make sure that you can... you get a few items, which obviously Stormrazor, i.e. Rapid Fire Cannon, is very, very good with Caitlyn. Jinx, I think Jinx is kind of a... I wouldn't say a weaker hyper carry than Vayne, but I think Jinx definitely needs an enchanter with her, whereas Vayne doesn't really need an enchanter with her most of the time, because she has a lot of self-pill and a lot of mobility, whereas Jinx can struggle a lot against certain champions. So I feel like Jinx can only really be played if you have an enchanter with you, like a Lulu, like a Janna, Nami, Yumi, something like that. But Vayne, I finally moved up into the S tier. I've been playing Vayne quite a lot recently, and to be honest, I've been playing her on the recent patch as well, and even after the nerfs, I still think Vayne is very, very strong. Her ultimate is still very, very good, even though you lost 20 movement speed, which is not really too much big of a deal, and you did lose 10 AD, but the main thing is now with the new Vayne build, if you saw yesterday's video, you go for Stormrazor as a second item, which gives you 40 attack damage. Now, Vayne didn't really have that attack damage before with the build, because you went for Blade Rune King, Solari Charge Blade into Infinity Edge, so you didn't really have the extra AD, but now you have the extra 40 AD from Stormrazor, so them nerfing the AD of Final Hour of the ultimate makes sense, but still, Vayne is very, very strong. I finally moved her up as well. And Jhin as well, very, very good against a full squishy comp. Scales very well now into the late game with the crit build. Again, just doesn't really do too well against tanks. Can struggle quite a lot against tanks. So, wouldn't recommend Jhin playing against tanks. But yeah, he is in the S tier. A+ tier, Draven. I'm not really too sure about Draven. I think some people think Draven is very, very strong, which I do agree with. But Draven is very difficult to play. Draven's one of them champions that you really need to master before you actually play him. So, yeah, he is a little bit difficult. But I'm not really too sure. You know, I still think you can carry games with Draven 100%. I don't think there is a problem with Draven at all at the moment in the current meta, because you can still go Stormrazor, Bloodthirster, i.e. items like this as well. But yeah, just a very, very difficult champion to play, which is why he's in the A+ tier. Ezreal's kind of fallen off a little bit. People try and Divine Sunder on him. Honestly, I wouldn't really recommend it unless you're against a full tank enemy team comp, like, I don't know, Rammus, Malphite, you know, champions like that. I still think Trinity Force is the best build for him. I haven't done an Ezreal video yet, but I will do an Ezreal video when the pajama skins come out. I'll do an Ezreal video to see how he is at the moment. But I just don't think he's that strong. I still think Essence Reaver is better than Divine Sunderer. But again, I just don't think he is as strong at the moment. Tristana. I think a weaker champion out of all these Stormrazor champions. I think Caitlyn, Xayah, Jinx, Vayne, and Jhin are all better Stormrazor users than Tristana. I think just Tristana. I think Tristana is just very difficult to play, which I mentioned before as well, with all of her abilities and everything, that she needs to auto attack the same champion over and over again. If she doesn't, and she can't get her research, then she can be quite difficult to play. Corki, I've been picking up a little bit. Is the next champion I'm going to be playing in my A to Z guide. I'm playing like full crit Corki with like Essence Reaver and other items like that. I'll probably be doing a video on Corki very, very soon. But yeah, he's not too bad, to be honest with you. He's pretty decent. He's not too bad. You can go for a Manamune build as well, but I like to go like Essence Reaver, Infinity Edge, Solari Charge Blade. So going for like them 3 items, which means that you get 75% crit with the Solari Charge Blade bonus. Then you go for Void Staff, and the last item you go for like Storm Razor for 100% crit, which is quite nice. The Storm Razor is another item now that Corki can build. You don't have to build like a useless item as your last crit item, like Phantom Dancer or Rapid Fire Cannon, which because attack speed doesn't really do too well on him. Lucian, I moved down a little bit. Now, Lucian doesn't really do too well with Storm Razor. I've tried Lucian with Storm Razor. His damage output is just not really there at the moment, in my opinion. I think going for probably Infinity Edge as the first item and maybe completely skipping out Storm Razor in general is probably the best way to go. Because Infinity Edge just does give you a lot of extra damage. And then you can go for maybe items like Navori Quick Blades can maybe be really, really good with Lucian. Again, I probably need to play Lucian a little bit more to see what the best build is with him. But I think the Storm Razor Infinity Edge combo, not really there for him. I don't think Storm Razor benefits a lot with Lucian. I think just going for as much AD as possible is the best way to go for Lucian. And then you can still build Solari Charge Blade in the middle late game. Karma in the dual lane, I have played a few times, is very, very strong. I think Karma in the dual lane is probably one of the best dual lane AP champions at the moment. I don't think she's as strong as the other Storm Razor champions. I still think, you know, AP mages in general have definitely dropped down quite a lot because of the Storm Razor changes and because some ADs are being very strong at the moment, which is why all the AP mages, are down in the A tier. But I think Karma is the best of the bunch. With Ziggs and Orianna as well. I think Ziggs can definitely move up as well into A+, because I think Ziggs is definitely very strong as well, because you can play so safe with Ziggs and you can just deal a lot of poke damage and just control a lot of the team fights as well with the ultimate. And I think Ziggs Rakan is a very strong combo. Ziggs Seraphine, you know, if you have a lot of lockdowns, Ziggs Leona as well. So I definitely feel like Ziggs can definitely go up there. But yeah, Karma with her shielding, with her damage, and with her utility as well, and with her stun can definitely be very annoying to deal with. But yeah, I briefly mentioned Ziggs. Definitely works very well with some supports as well. It definitely can be very strong. Orianna as well, again, more of a control mage in the dual lane. Seraphine, again, can be comboed with other supports like Leona, like Rakan. And you can follow that up with your ultimate as well. So I think some of these AP mages, like the reason why Seraphine is higher in the dual lane than the mid lane is that Seraphine has a bit of protection. Sometimes some of these champions, if they don't have any protection, like Seraphine, like Brand, like Veigar, can struggle a lot in the mid lane. But in the dual lane, they definitely can. They definitely can benefit a lot from having someone there to support them. Morgana as well, not really played a lot anymore in the dual lane. Again, more of a utility champion, but could definitely still wave clear very well and could definitely be very strong during team fights. B tier, some of these champions are just here. You know, Akshan, I think, is just a lot better in the mid lane than the dual lane at the moment. You don't really benefit a lot from playing aggressive because you can't really play aggressive in a 2 versus 2 situation, especially if you're against like an Alistar or someone that has a lot of crowd control. And you can't really benefit a lot from using your passive and trading a lot in the laning phase. Ashe, again, just doesn't really benefit a lot from the Storm Razor changes. It's just very weak at the moment. Is strong and competitive, to be honest with you. I still think Ashe is very good and competitive, but in solo queue just doesn't have the damage output, doesn't have the I guess you can call it the carry potential, because Ashe is more there for her crowd control, for her slows and her ultimates. Brand and Veigar, I think, are just weaker mages than the ones above. You don't really do a lot of damage. You can't really get a lot of lane pressure with these two champions, and yeah, overall just not very good. And Misfortune as well. I've been seeing Misfortune, people with Misfortune building full crit, and I actually want to give it a try as well. I've been seeing like Storm Razor, Essence Reaver, you know, that sort of build. You can maybe go like Essence Reaver, Storm Razor, i.e. Serrade's Grudge or something like that. I mean, maybe Serrade's Grudge as the third item is probably better. But maybe, you know, that sort of build might be pretty good for Misfortune, like going full crit. I was going to say, said Lucian. Meant Misfortune, sorry. Can be pretty good. I haven't tried it out myself just yet, but I just don't think she's very strong. You know, you can go still for Lethality Misfortune, but again, kind of takes a long time to scale and doesn't really benefit a lot. And it's very unique as well. Doesn't really do too well against a lot of assassins that could dive on top of you. And again, Senna's in the C tier because you don't want to play Senna as an AD carry, as a farming AD carry. Fasting Senna would probably be somewhere around here, maybe. I actually think Senna is pretty good at the moment with Black Cleaver and Divine Sundra, but again, you don't want to play her as AD carry. as like a farming AD carry, I would say. And finally, onto the supports. So I'll blitz through this as quick as possible because I don't think anything has actually changed here with the supports at all. I still think Karma is insanely busted and completely broken. Again, her Q was only the thing that got nerfed, and it was an empowered Q, which again didn't really mean too much as a support. You can still go for like Staff of Flame Water, Athene's, all of the shield. I think the shielding is the main part with Karma. You know, getting movement speed and having so much shielding as well is insanely strong, and all of her crowd control that she has from her second ability and her ultimate is just way too strong. Yuumi as well was still very good. Much better as a duo lane or a trio Q pick than a solo Q pick. But still in solo queue can be very, very good because you can buff up a lot of champions, especially the junglers as well. If you have like a Jax jungle and an Olaf jungle, Yuumi is an incredibly powerful pick. I don't know why I've done this back to front. Thresh, in my opinion, is probably the best solo queue pick, in my opinion, because of just what he can offer. His hook, his flay, you know, being as an engaged champion, using all of Thresh's abilities is very, very strong. And using his lantern as well to get enemies to safety. His peeling is very good. Thresh is just good at everything, you know. Engage, disengage, being able to save champions, being able to be that frontline initiator as well. Thresh is just overall a great champion to play. And one of my favourite supports as well. Rakan, even though I put Electrocute here, you can play Rakan with Aftershock as well. Can be okay, to be honest with you. Is, you know, Rakan's one of them champions that you can be the frontline initiator, but sometimes you can get bursted completely as well. Hold on a second. You can get 100 to 0 bursted if you go for like full AP. So if you go for tank Rakan, it can be very good. Obviously, Xayah Rakan is a great duo at the moment because Rakan gets extra bonuses, and also Xayah gains extra bonuses as well with that combo. But I think by himself, Rakan is still a great support to play. But I think it's just more of an Ardent Sensor meta at the moment because of these Storm Razor and the Hyper Carries. So Lulu and Nami are still really, really good. I think Yuumi and Karma are better than Nami and Lulu. Nami probably can move up, to be honest. I definitely think Nami can definitely move up because I think the solo carry potential of Nami is definitely still there with her bubble, with her tidal wave, with her second ability as well, especially during laning phase, to be able to deal damage and also heal yourself at the same time. So yeah, Nami could definitely move up. Lulu, again, you know, all these Ardent Sensor champions like Lulu, Yuumi, and Karma could definitely be very good in duo queue as well. Because you could just go like Lulu Jinx, Lulu Vayne, Karma Jinx, Karma Vayne, Nami Jinx, Nami Vayne. You know, again, it's more of an Ardent Sensor meta because of how strong the hyper carries are at the moment. Alistar as an engaged champion is still very, very strong. Very tanky at the moment as well. But again, just kind of doesn't really do too much against this Divine Sunderer meta. But I think as an engaged champion, you struggle a lot at level 1, really, because you're going to get pushed in because you don't really have anything to do. At level 1, you just sit at back as a cow and you just can't really use your abilities or do anything. Once you hit level 2 and level 3, if you're against these enchanter supports like Lulu, Karma, Yuumi, Nami, you could definitely look to try and engage if you have an aggressive AD carry with you like a Lucian or Misfortune. That's really where Alistar can shine. Janna is quite good as a disengaged champion. I think Janna is very good when she can use her ultimates to help the team and help disengage against all these heavy bruisers and heavy assassins at the moment. Her shields are still very strong. She does a lot of poke during laning phase, and also her tornado is very good. So yeah, she's still very, very strong, and she's still very, very good. A tier, most of these champions are not that bad, to be honest with you. I think Braum is still very, very good. Just Braum kind of struggles a lot against these enchanter supports because you can't really do too much as a Braum. He's more of like a disengaged peel support. More of a disengaged peel support in a laner phase, unless you can hit a first ability and follow that up with like a Lucian, for example. You can't really do too much. You're just sitting back and you're just a completely useless support in the laner phase. Galio and Leona can do very good at engaging. Leona engaging with her ultimate, with her third ability, and also all of her crowd control. Very, very good single target crowd control. Very, very good during team fights as well. If you can kind of isolate an enemy in a way, use your ultimate and catch them out, which can be very good. Galio is still really good as a tank support, even though the nerfs came in for him. He's still very, very good. His ultimate as well is very good. That's kind of a zoning tool against bruisers that are trying to jump on top of you. And Galio can be comboed very well with champions like Camille and Joven. Morgana with her Black Shield is still very, very good. Again, Morgana can be paired with the likes of Jinx, Vayne, all these hyper carries, which I still think are very, very good. So Morgana's completely fine sitting there. Senna is just... I hate playing with Senna supports, honestly. The amount of times I play with Senna supports, it's... Honestly, an AD carry's worst nightmare, I think, having a Senna support. The thing is like, Senna support is like having a secondary AD carry, which is not what you need as a support. Because Senna is just so useless. You know, she doesn't really offer too much. But the thing is like, Senna is still Senna. So, you know, you scale quite well into the late game. You have a lot of healing. You know, you are that secondary AD carry, which if you don't want to rely on your team, then I would definitely recommend picking Senna as a support, because, like I said, you could be that secondary carry. You know, if you build like tanky with Black Cleaver, Divine Sunderer, you can be very, very tanky, dish out a lot of damage, and you have a lot of crowd control, you have a lot of healing and shielding as well. So yeah, that's why Senna is not like tier. Sona and Seraphine. Sona is very, very weak during the laning phase, but if you can... I feel like the game is not really much about the laning phase now, because I feel like if you pick a hyper carry, like Jinx, like Jhin, like Vayne, all you have to do is just play passive during the laning phase. I think laning phase is not really a big deal at the moment. If you just farm up, if you just scale and just survive during the laning phase, then Sona can be very, very strong, because you can go Seraph's Embrace, Starflow. I think once you get like 3 items with Sona, Seraph's Embrace, Starflow, and Water, and Ardent Sensor, she's disgusting. She's so disgusting. She can keep spamming her abilities, spamming her damage as well. Her crescendo is very, very strong. But again, you just have to be very, very passive during laning phase, which can you know, be a little bit of a downside as well. Seraphine can be very good with her ultimate Trottle special right here. Very, very good champion in the right hands, aka Trottles. But yeah. Again, more of like a secondary carry than a support, really. Shen can be very good in early laning phases. I did play against a couple of Shen supports, and to be honest, in the early game, with Aftershock, if you can land a talk, he can be very, very good, to be honest with you. But again, if you're against AD carries that have a lot of self-peel, like Caitlyn, like Jinx with her traps, and again, against some Enchanter supports, Shen can definitely struggle, because he's just gonna get poked out in the laning phase. Same with Set and Amumu as well. Again, against the Enchanter supports, you're just gonna get poked out a lot. You need to play very aggressive with these supports like Set, Amumu, and Shen. If you don't, then you're just gonna get poked out in laning phase and just get outscaled. But you need to get an early laning phase advantage with these champions. If you don't, then you're kind of useless. Blitzcrank, if you can hit your hook, wonderful champion. If you can't, you're the most useless champion in the game. Honestly, the extra movement speed that they gave Blitzcrank was actually very, very good. I definitely have to give props to Riot for that one. But yeah, overall, not very good. And then Lux is Lux against secondary carry, and Soraka just gets countered by 1 item. Soraka in the early game is very, very good, like the early laning phases. But all you have to do is just buy Bramble Vest, Executioner's Calling, Oblivion Orb, and then she just basically becomes useless. But anyway, that's it for my tier list. Hopefully you all enjoyed the tier list. As you can see, a lot of S+ tier champions, a lot of S tier champions. And to be honest, not a lot of champions that are in the C and D tier. You can see that no champions at all are in the D tier. C tier is kind of, you know, fit with some champions that are completely weak at the moment. But to be honest, the meta is in a really, really nice spot. I really like the meta at the moment. I think it's very, very good. There are a lot of champions you can play. Even though I put some champions in the S+ tier, there's a lot of S tier champions that you can play and carry with in the current meta, which is what a meta is nice and good about, because you get to play a lot of champions. But yeah, if you don't know, Wild Rift Fire, the website that I'm currently working on at the moment with the guys over at MobileFire. So this website, you can go through, you can check all the champion builds. For example, Karma, if I can even find her, you can go through on this website. You have a video there that you can watch as well. You have ability breakdowns, build breakdowns, rune breakdowns, early and late game tips as well. Just very, very good overall. And then you have all the builds here as well for dual lane, mid lane, and the support. So make sure you check out Wild Rift Fire. Again, let me know down in the comments what you think of the tier list. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I'll see you all in the next Wild Rift video. Take care. Peace.